Hi guys, please excuse the clickbait title. I actually like James Smith and I've seen a few of his videos. And I think generally he puts out a pretty good message and has good intentions in his content. And I think is quite a smart guy who puts a lot of effort into his content and everything else. But I think he's way off here in his recent Joe Wicks video. And so I've repurposed the title of that video to kind of explain why I think that. And I think it's an important topic. So if you haven't been following, Joe Wicks recently put out a kind of it's a real product, but it's kind of like a publicity stunt. He's put out a protein bar called the Killer Protein Bar, and he's put as many, by his definition, ultra processed ingredients into the bar as possible. And the bar is for sale. You can buy it, but the idea is kind of to show it's sort of like Jamie Oliver meets Banksy. You know, it's kind of like to show what is on the market and to show what you're allowed to put into one of these bars, and to try and highlight, you know, kind of like how unhealthy some of these ingredients are, or how, in his view, how lax the regulation is. And yeah, I mean, I'm not a huge fan of that kind of publicity stunt. I think making it available for sale and actually, I mean, he says the profits are going to charity and stuff, but I still think making it available for sale is a bit odd and unnecessary. I guess in his mind, that's his way of drawing attention to the issue. Anyway, James Smith has taken issue with this, and not so much for those reasons. The main reason James Smith, in his own words, has taken issue with this is that he feels that Joe Wicks' general perspective on this subject, particularly as conveyed by this publicity stunt, is unscientific, and there's no studies to back up, or at least that Joe isn't citing studies that back up his assertion that the majority of these products are unhealthy. And I guess what James is getting at as well is that ultra processed is kind of a buzzword. It's kind of become the new thing, and it's a kind of vague and at times meaningless term. And I would accept that like at times it's easy to throw around processed. I mean, processed could be a lot of things. Powdering something is processing it, and there are a lot of things you can do to something that would constitute processing it that aren't necessarily bad. But there's a lot more nuance to it than that. And more importantly, I think, to give you an example of why I think that's wrong, maybe it's a kind of crude example, but say you're going to invite a stranger into your home, or someone tries to bring a stranger into your home, a stranger tries to enter your home, let's just say, you don't go, right, someone show me a newspaper article showing that this man has committed a murder, otherwise I'll just allow him in. You don't go, prove to me that this man is dangerous, otherwise there's no problem. You go, I don't know who this person is, I don't want them in my home, I don't know anything about them, and why should I allow them into my home? I'll just have my friends and family in, you know? So what I'm getting at is, just because you can't cite specific research proving, in quotes, that a certain food is unhealthy or bad for you, and proving exactly how and why, and proving, as James has said, that that's causation and not correlation, that doesn't mean that it's healthy. It doesn't mean that you should consume it. It doesn't mean that you should be flippant about what you put into your body. Also, there is data that exists, that has existed for hundreds, if not thousands of years, on what is and isn't healthy, and that's just human data. That's just anecdotal. That's how long we live for. That's the effect that these foods have on our bodies. That's just the subjective experience of eating them and how you feel afterwards, and what symptoms or side effects you do or don't have, and also just the fact that, most importantly, there are foods that human beings have been eating for literally thousands of years. And then there are foods like some of the ones in these bars, and not just the ingredients themselves, but the like new ways of manufacturing these ingredients that are ever changing, that have been around for, a handful of years, like 10 years. So again, would you rather have someone in your house who who everyone in your family knows, who your family's family knew his family's family, or someone who's just appeared at your door and who you go, right, I have no reason to believe that this person is dangerous, but I also don't know that they're not, and I don't know this person. And so, I think the choice is obvious. You'd say, no, I don't want this person in my home. When it comes to food and what you put in your body, do you trust, like, what, by the way, has been proven time and time again to be corrupt scientific bodies? Like, we know for a fact that so many studies are bought and paid for. Coca-Cola funds so many studies into obesity. So many companies, tobacco companies, bought so many studies and financially incentivized these labs to produce conclusions and results that were favorable to them, that were favorable to the tobacco industry. Moreover, you can't prove everything in a lab. You just can't. It's just not possible. Like, you can't replicate hundreds of years of human experience in across like millions of people and their consumption habits and the effects that has on them. You can't replicate that in a lab, in a test tube, or with 100 participants and a double-blind placebo study. Like, you just can't do that. You can study things like, okay, does this food appear to make people fat? What effect does this food have on your hormones? Or does this food, produce an increase of this or that? But that's not the same thing. Like, there are so many variables. You can't study everything. And even if you could, you can't blindly trust the people that do it. A, because they can get things wrong. There can be flaws in their methodology. B, because there are just things we don't understand everything as human beings. Scientists don't understand everything about the human body. We don't understand everything about the human body. We don't always know what we're even supposed to be looking for. There are intangibles that are just hard for us to understand, or that, science is constantly proving itself wrong. Like, particularly when it comes to nutrition, it's constantly changing. And if you followed the trends of what the scientific consensus is on this or that, it changes a ridiculous amount. And that's not just popular science. That's not just like, the stuff that the public latches onto. The general scientific consensus on what is or isn't healthy to eat has shifted so much and continues to shift so much. So it's absurd to rely on that. It's absurd to think that is enough, like that's enough information that you can go, okay, well, no one at this lab in Oxford has told me that. I mean, let's look at some of these ingredients. So, hydrolyzed whey protein. I don't know what hydrolyzing is. Perhaps James does, perhaps some of you do, perhaps it's completely fine. I don't know. I don't really care, because I just prefer to eat stuff that doesn't contain maltitol, xylitol, aspartame, sucralose, polydextrose, maltodextrin, emulsifiers, stabilizers, preservatives. And then vitamins, we have at the end of the list here. Now, vitamins sound good, but there can be two things that are allowed to be classified as vitamin C that are completely different. There can be vitamin C that you derive from food, and there's vitamin C that's produced through chemical processes where they're not strict. They're not stringent about, like, even how bioavailable these things are. You can buy supplements. You can buy, like, dirt cheap from your local supermarket, like, £2 vitamin C supplements, where they've basically done just enough to say, yes, this is technically vitamin C. Never mind how we made it. Never mind how it's absorbed. Never mind what contaminants might be in there from the process of making it, because that isn't really checked for. It ticks a certain box. It's vitamin C, done. It's quite easy to avoid these things. Like, it's really not that hard. Even if you want quick protein, there's a lot of stuff you can have. Even like a thing that's come up a lot is people are saying, oh, there's a cost of living crisis. You shouldn't be telling people it's bad to eat this or it's bad to eat that. That is bollocks. Like, if you're just talking about health, if you're talking about going to the gym, you're talking about bodybuilding, it is just quite expensive generally. Like, protein bars are fucking expensive, by the way, but it is expensive generally to build muscle, to eat like an optimal diet, for bodybuilding and stuff like that. That's true. To eat healthily is cheap as fuck. Like, it's often cheaper to eat healthily than it is to eat shite. Vegetables are incredibly cheap. A lot of whole foods, even if they're not that nice, stuff that you know is fine, because again, people have been eating it for literally thousands of years, like rice, potatoes. I know they'll come out with a study once in a while going, potatoes are actually, no, potatoes are fine. Rice is fucking fine. People have been eating it for literally thousands of years. And many of those people have, in a lot of areas where people live the longest, a lot of these villages where huge amounts of people live to 100 or more, they eat all of these things. They eat eggs, they eat rice, they eat potatoes, they eat tomatoes. Like, we know tomatoes are fine. We know that for a fact. So many people who've lived in these incredibly healthy areas, and I know there are other factors. I know we haven't, yes, I can't, some of it hasn't been literally studied down to the finest detail, but you can look at a glance and go, okay, these people in this village in Italy all seem incredibly healthy and incredibly happy. They eat tomatoes, they eat potatoes, they eat a bit of rabbit, they eat chicken, they eat a bit of egg, they eat cheese. Most of all, the common denominator seems to be that they eat stuff that's local and not particularly heavily processed most of the time, and comes in a somewhat pure form. It hasn't gone through 500 plastic containers in a lab. It hasn't been pulverized and reconstituted and fucking bleached and dehydrated and rehydrated and put through foil containers and put through, like, none. It's just food. It's actual food that human beings have been eating forever. So I don't even remember what my point was or where I was, but basically, you can use common sense. Like, you don't have to cite a scientific study for everything. And I should point out, by the way, I don't particularly I think most of what Joe Wicks says is nonsense. I actually like Joe Wicks as well, kind of. I think he's a bit like a bit of a simple chap, I would say. But I think, again, like, definitely has good intentions. I understand, some of this might come off as a bit cynical, and he makes a lot of money from this stuff and this and that, and you can question so much of it, as James does. All in all, at the end of the day, like, I don't think he's a bad person. I think he might just be a bit confused about some of what he's saying or doing or what he should do. He's been put oddly on a pedestal. I don't really know why. He just used to make interval training videos, and he's been put on this very strange pedestal and given a sort of odd level of, like, importance as it relates to public health. So I do understand from that point of view. I understand looking at it from a skeptical perspective. I understand not liking it. I understand not liking this particular publicity stunt, and I even understand saying, like, it's somewhat unscientific. But I think to basically say, essentially what James is saying in his video is, it's fine to eat protein bars unless you see a study saying that you shouldn't. That is absurd. Like, that is absolutely absurd. There are studies. It's the human study. It's life. It's history. That's the study. That is far more powerful than a thing that you can do in a lab. And as for the price thing, I mean, not really, because you can buy egg. And by the way, I know, like, I would prefer if when I bought egg whites, they weren't in a plastic bottle, and I'm sure that they sometimes put E numbers in them. I buy peanut powder instead of protein powder because it's basically just powdered peanuts. I'm sure if I saw how that was made, I wouldn't like it. We know for a fact, by the way, that microplastics are very bad for you. It's, again, common sense when you look at factories. If you've ever seen a factory, if you've ever seen how these products are made, they go through so much processing. So much of that is done with plastic. They go through plastic containers. They go through plastic filters. They get put in hot plastic containers to be like, what do you call it when you heat them up to kill the bacteria and stuff? They go through ghastly processes. Like, if you actually watch these videos of how things are made, it's disgusting and scary. And you don't need a scientific study to tell you that that's bad. You don't need a scientific study to tell you, to put this in plastic, to shake it around, to heat it up, to powder it, to dehydrate it, to rehydrate it, to store it for 6 weeks, you just use your brain. Like, that's not how food is supposed to be. That's not nature. The further it is from that, the less you should blindly trust it. Sure, if there's something where we go, oh, this looks like shit, it looks unhealthy, but people have been eating it for 500 years, and actually those people appear to be living far longer than everybody else and so much healthier and happier, then sure. But generally speaking, you can just use your brain. You can use common sense. Like, normal food is good for you. People who eat normal food live longer. We don't have any evidence of people in villages that eat xylitol, maltitol, aspartame, sucralose, polydextrose, maltodextrin, emulsifiers, stabilizers, and preservatives. I don't think like your gut flora wants to be like stabilized and preserved. I don't think it's normal that you buy bread and it goes off after 6 weeks left open in the cupboard, and it takes that long to get moldy. I don't think that's normal. I don't think your stomach likes that. I don't think that's healthy. No, I don't have a study to back that up. I don't fucking need one. I can just use my brain. I can just use common sense. So yeah, you can't avoid these things entirely. I don't think you should. And as James rightly pointed out in the video, stress is, of all the chemicals, like cortisol is one of the most harmful ones that we regularly, have in our bodies. And so, yeah, becoming stressed about food is bad for you as well. I try to avoid microplastics, and I know sometimes I get too stressed. Like, it's not healthy. You should also be comfortable with what you're doing and what you're eating and relax and everything. But like, you should generally, if you're using common sense, you should and would generally avoid things that are ultra processed, that are alien, that are new, that have extremely long names, that are made through very stringent chemical processes that are, again, alien. Like, you don't know or understand what they're doing to it. So don't, you don't put your hand into a random hole in a wall and go, "Ooh, what's going to happen behind this mystery hole?" You just go, "No, I'll keep it here where I can fucking see it and where I know what's happening." So yeah, I don't think you should roll a dice with your health, like, because of what exactly? Like, protein bars are not cheap. Protein powder is quite a cheap source of protein, but again, to me, and yeah, I know like egg whites and peanut powder, that's not perfect, but for me, like, there's a lot less processing going on. There's a lot less ingredients. Every one of those ingredients has gone through a process. So when you see 20 ingredients that begin with X and have 400 letters in their name, every one of those ingredients has gone through a process as well. It's not just the product as a whole. Like, from start to finish, the process of making like an artificially sweetened chocolate protein powder. Sorry, but the amount of variables, the amount of unknowns, the amount of alien stuff, the amount of things that haven't been tried and tested to the same extent as a chicken breast or tuna fish or eggs, it's like, we're talking about like hundreds of sort of variables and factors and qualities and stuff. Like, you can't, that's so unknown to you. So yeah, eat whatever the fuck you want. Obviously, if you want to eat that stuff and you go, "Yeah, I don't know what this is, but fuck it, I'm fine with it," fine. But don't let people convince you that you have to have a study from Oxford or Cambridge tell you what is or isn't healthy. You don't. You absolutely don't. And a lot of the time, there is an agenda behind these studies. A lot of it recently has been pushing particular agendas, which I won't get into because that's a whole separate issue, but there are a lot of agenda-driven scientific studies. So, yeah, I don't think people should use buzzwords about food and just sort of scare people with kind of like random shit, but ultra-processed, whilst it can be a buzzword, it's not really one. It's a real thing. It's ultra-processed. It's food that is basically as far from its sort of natural state as it really can be. Look at the ingredients. What does your gut tell you? I mean, literally, what does your gut tell you when you eat this fucking stuff? Because I couldn't do the protein powders anymore. It's horrible. You feel like shit. Or I did. Some people are fine. Whatever. What does your gut tell you, as in your intuition? And what does your actual gut tell you? Compare that to a chicken breast, can of tuna, a tin of salmon. And again, tins, I know there's a lot of stuff wrong with those. There's a lot of linings on the tins. There's a lot of microplastics. You get that with the processed shit anyway. You get the microplastics, you get the aluminium, you get all these particles of crap in your food that are not listed in the ingredients, and all the other contaminants that make it in during the million processes they put your food through. Do you trust these people? Do you trust these regulatory bodies? Do you trust these, like, multinational billion, trillion dollar companies? They don't give a fuck. They crap this stuff out in a factory. They whack it into like hot plastic and wrap it up and bring it to you. You're consuming ridiculous amounts of like alien stuff that your body doesn't understand. and that you don't understand. Yeah, no, I don't think it should be that way. I think we should. I think we should. Um, I think we've forgotten what it means a bit to be a human, to be human, to learn from centuries or more of human experience. That's how we know to eat the things that we eat now. That's how we know not to eat poison. That's how we know where to get the food, how to prepare it. We know far more from that. Think of the stuff that we eat and how, we didn't learn how to cook a chicken breast in a lab. We didn't learn like which berries are poisonous in a lab. We learned the overwhelming majority of what we know about food from centuries or millennia of human experience. So don't forget about that. Don't become blind to that, and put all of your faith in strangers, in a small group of strangers who are paid to produce studies and who very often have their own agendas and who sometimes just get things wrong and who aren't always trying to investigate what you want to know anyway. So yeah, that's all basically. Yeah, as I said, excuse the clickbait title. I'm not really trying to stir up drama. I'm just trying to draw attention to something that I think is important. And yeah, shout out to James Smith and Joe Wicks. And thanks for watching, guys. Take care. Bye. Another very important thing I forgot to add. If you look at chronic diseases, there are so many chronic diseases that are either didn't really exist before or are massively rising. And life expectancies aren't going up that much, even though we have like crazy medical advancements now. Medical technology is incredible. In theory, particularly if we as James is espousing, just trust the men in white coats, trust science, then really, I mean, like, in theory, and as we're told, pharmaceutical progress is being made constantly. There are constantly new developments, new drugs that are supposed to keep us healthier, make us live longer, keep us safe from these diseases. And so many diseases, I know many of them are obesity related, I get that. And what James is saying is basically, well, actually, protein bars are quite good, or at least, if you're working out, you're eating protein bars, you're not fat, you've got muscle on your body, you're probably quite healthy. Which is, yeah, I mean, like, it's kind of like a blunt statement, but it's not necessarily untrue. But you can't say that all of these diseases are, that like mass widespread male infertility is purely obesity related. It's not. And yeah, I know it's our lifestyles, sedentary lifestyles, being indoors, not sleeping well, not getting enough sunlight, being on the computer all the time. But there are so many of these illnesses, like, that didn't seem to be a problem before, that so many people don't have when they live a lifestyle that's closer to nature. And I know there are many that people did have. I'm not romanticizing like a hunter-gatherer lifestyle, saying everything was perfect when we lived in trees. Like, I'm not saying that. But there are so many modern diseases, modern illnesses, modern ailments, problems that you would think, given all the advancements allegedly made by these people in labs, by these people who study everything apparently so meticulously, you would think that wouldn't be a problem. You'd think we would have either eliminated them, or that they wouldn't be emerging to the extent that they are. But there are so many, and people are so unwell. And again, it's logical to assume, you can't know for sure. And you can't, well, you can if you want to, but you shouldn't state it as a fact if it isn't one. But it's logical to assume that that our diet is a big part of this, and our diet has changed so much in such a short space of time. Like, from the 1950s until now, our diet has changed radically. Like, what we eat now, in particularly in the West, in cities and in developed countries, has changed so radically in that like 75-year period. It's unrecognizable, and the biggest change has been things becoming packaged, pre-processed, and in quotes, ultra processed. So yeah, I mean, it would actually be scientific to look at that and go, okay, well, yes, as James said, that would be correlation and can't be proven as such broadly as causation. But that doesn't matter. Like when you're talking about your own health, like you're not submitting a paper for peer review here. You're talking about your own life, you're talking about your own body, and you don't really need to know that like for a fact. You don't need to prove it. You don't need to sort of act like a redditor about it. Like you just use your brain and go, right, it appears that what we're eating is not that healthy. Or at least it's quite likely that it's not that healthy. It's quite likely that these changes in our diet have not been good because they don't seem to be making us happier or healthier. Again, I understand obesity, a lack of exercise, sedentary lifestyles is a huge part of that. You cannot chalk all of it up to that. Particularly, a lot of these are like birth defects or things that children are born with, illnesses that children are born with, like chronic illnesses and stuff that some people who appear healthy are developing. It's not the case that everyone who's developing all these weird new like chronic illnesses and stuff, it's not the case that they're all unhealthy. It's not the case that all these men who are infertile now are all obese or that they all live sedentary lifestyles. That's not true. Male infertility is accelerating like extremely rapidly, and no, that's not just in obese men. Otherwise it would be a fairly easy problem to solve. And there are many countries where there aren't that many people who are obese. Like, you know, obesity is very high in some developed nations, not in others, and it doesn't track. Like that doesn't track. So there are a lot of problems we have now that are very real problems, and I think some of us don't remember what it was like before because we weren't alive, including myself, including James. You know, like it's not normal that when you step back, it's not normal that so many people are so ill. It's not normal that infertility is very much not normal that male infertility is rising so rapidly without clear explanation. And you could go, well, we don't have a study to say what's causing this. We don't know why male infertility. We don't know that for sure why male infertility is accelerating at the rate that it is. So does that mean we can't do anything about it because we don't have a study that proves it to the satisfaction of people like James who believe everything has to be rigorously and scientifically proven? Does that mean we should just go, well, let's just keep eating all this utter shite because we haven't conclusively proven in a lab that it's bad? I don't think so. I think if something has worked for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, I think it makes sense to continue doing it. And if you try to change and it works, then great. But if you're not sure, then why change something that has worked for thousands and thousands of years? So yeah, that's all. I had to add this addendum because I think it's a pretty important aspect of the topic of the video I was planning to make. Cool. All right, guys, thanks for watching. Bye.